Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at something truly disturbing. It's a story about where history and just pure criminality collide. We're talking about a man named Hubert Pilčík. To his neighbors, he was just uncle, a harmless herbalist. But in reality, he was leading people across the Iron Curtain, not to freedom, but straight to their deaths.
It's the ultimate betrayal, and for this deep dive, we're going into the source material that really details how he truly exploited one of the most chaotic periods in Central European history.
Right.
Our mission today is to really try and understand how this seemingly kind old man became, arguably the most prolific serial killer in Czechoslovakia's history.
Okay, so let's set the scene because the context here is everything. It's not just background noise. It's the thing that made all of this possible.
Absolutely.
We're Czechoslovakia between 1948 and 1951. Now, for our listeners who might not be as familiar with Cold War history, what was it actually like right after the communist takeover in February of 48?
It was an overnight nightmare for a huge portion of the population. An immediate, drastic shift into total oppression.
So not a slow burn.
Not at all. The Communist Party just consolidated all power. They eliminated any political opposition, nationalized all private property, and just systematically suppressed any form of dissent. If you had money, a business, or even just an independent thought, your life was suddenly unbearable.
And the natural reaction to that is to get out.
A mass exodus. That's exactly what the sources show. People just saw their lives, their futures, everything they'd built just vanish.
So they fled.
Precisely. The desperation was immense. After 48, you're looking at a conservative estimate of around 250,000 citizens trying to flee the country.
And they're all heading west, right, towards West Germany.
Mostly, yes. But the border was being sealed up fast. The Iron Curtain wasn't just a phrase, it was becoming a real thing, a physical barrier with fences, patrols. It was getting deadlier by the day.
And this is where the vulnerability really kicks in, isn't it? These people are carrying their entire life savings with them, but not cash.
No, cash was traceable or worthless. They were carrying what they could physically hold: jewelry, family heirlooms, maybe some expensive furs, small, high-value things.
Their only currency to buy their way to a new life.
Exactly. And that currency was meant to pay the one person they had to trust completely. The privilegish, the ferryman, the guide who promised to get them across the border.
So you have families putting their lives, their trust, and every valuable thing they own into the hands of a total stranger.
Yes. And that desperation, that was Pilčík's hunting ground. It created this perfect storm where the victims literally came to him carrying their own payment.
It's just a horrifying setup. The state makes seeking freedom a crime, which forces good people into this shadow world where monsters like him are waiting.
That's the tragic irony. He thrived in that moral vacuum.
So let's get into the man himself. Hubert Pilčík. Before he was the uncle monster, who was he?
Well, on the surface, he was completely unremarkable. Born in 1891, he worked for decades as a locksmith at the huge Akota Works factory in Pusek. A respectable blue-collar job.
Skilled tradesman.
Right. He was married to a woman named Antony, who was about 11 years younger. They lived in a quiet little village, scenic, no children, just a stable, aging, working man.
But the image he projected was much more than that. He built a real persona.
Oh, he really did. It's a very compelling facade. In his village, he had this fantastic reputation. People knew him as an herbalist, a nature lover, someone who knew all the local trails in the woods.
Which, of course, is the perfect cover for a border guide.
It's the perfect resume, but he added this other sort of dramatic flair to it.
The Titanic story.
The Titanic story. He actually boasted that he was a survivor of the sinking in 1912.
Wow. Is there any truth to that?
Absolutely no evidence to support it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter, does it? It gave him this air of being an adventurer, a survivor. If a man survived the Titanic, surely he could get you across a border.
It's a brilliant piece of psychological manipulation. He's building trust from the moment you meet him.
And all of it, the entire uncle persona, was just a front for his real side job: systematic robbery and murder.
So between 48 and 51, he's using this ferryman role to lure people in.
Yes. Sometimes he'd even have them stay at his house for weeks, really lulling them into a false sense of security before he'd rob and kill them.
He was eventually convicted of 5 murders, but everyone suspected it was more.
Many more. The authorities thought it could be 10, maybe even more. He died in prison in 1951. He was 59 years old.
The gap between the life people thought he lived and the evidence they found is just staggering.
And what's really chilling is how prepared he was. This wasn't just opportunistic.
No, he was methodical. And you have to realize, it wasn't just the immigrants. After his arrest, police found out he was also systematically robbing his neighbors' houses in Seneca.
So he was just a career criminal, through and through.
A pervasive criminality. He was running 2 different operations at the same time, one large scale, one small scale. And the private armory they found. That just completely shatters the image of the gentle herbalist, doesn't it? This wasn't just a guy with a hunting rifle.
Not even close. The police found a significant weapons cache he had hidden. For a locksmith in a quiet village, it was alarming. They found an English Sten submachine gun.
A submachine gun? That's a military weapon.
Military grade. And an Austrian Rothsteyr pistol, a Czechoslovak CZ pistol, an English revolver. He also had a German paratrooper knife with a sliding blade.
Why would Uncle, the herbalist, need a Sten gun? Unless he was expected some serious trouble.
It speaks to how seriously he took his criminal enterprise. This wasn't a game. But what's interesting is that the heavy weapons weren't actually his preferred tools for the murders themselves.
No. His main weapon was much more primitive, much more personal.
Exactly. The weapon he most likely used was a weighted club, a truncheon with a metal core inside.
Designed for one purpose.
To stun someone quickly and quietly, no gunshot to draw attention. It suggests a very hands-on, calculated method. He wanted to be close enough to control the situation.
And his victims often came to him through referrals, which just adds another layer of betrayal. Let's talk about the Bally family. Their story really became the core of the case against him.
The Bally family is. It's a perfect, tragic snapshot of the kind of people trying to escape. Renata Baliova was a photographer. She had her own studio.
Which was taken from her.
Right. The communists nationalized private businesses, so her entire livelihood, her financial security was just wiped out overnight. She had to flee.
And she knew Pilčík beforehand.
Yes, and this is key. She knew his reputation as a reliable guide. In fact, the records show she had even recommended him to some of her own clients before she needed his help herself.
That's just devastating. The trust he built was so complete.
It was immense.
So who was in the group he was supposed to be guiding?
It was Renata, her father, Emmanuel Bally, and her 12-year-old niece, Daniela. Sometimes you see her name as Dagmar in early reports, but Daniela is correct.
And they had a destination in mind.
Yes, a German village called Großkonruth. They believed Hubert Pilčík, their trusted uncle, was their ticket to safety.
And this all begins to unravel on March 6th, 1951. It starts with the murder of the father, Emmanuel.
The way he killed Emmanuel Bally it's not just cruel, it's elaborately staged. On March 6th, Pilčík leads Emmanuel away from Renata and Daniela. He tells him they're starting the crossing early.
He separates the group.
He separates them. He takes Emmanuel to a place he knows very well, a remote hunting lodge called Lipovka. And he gives him this very specific, believable lie.
What is the story?
Pilčík told him they couldn't go the whole way on foot. He said a collaborator was going to meet them at the lodge to drive him the last 60 kilometers to the border. So he tells Bally to just go inside and wait. Rest up. You're safe.
And while Emmanuel is inside, maybe thinking about his new life, Pilčík attacks.
Yes, he stuns him, most likely with that weighted club, a blow to the back of the head. But he doesn't stop there. This is where it goes into just pure sadism.
This is the fire.
The fire. He doused the unconscious or stunned man with motor oil. They found 2 bottles of flammable liquid in the attic and then covered him with hay and straw. And then he set the entire lodge on fire.
Burning him alive.
Burning him alive. And there's a forensic detail in the sources, that is. It's just absolutely horrific, but it's crucial.
What did they find?
The autopsy on the charred remains, found the next day, revealed traces of boiling blood in the arteries.
My God.
Which is conclusive proof. Emmanuel Bally was alive when that fire started. This wasn't a quick death. This was torture.
And even with all that destruction, the investigators did manage to find a few small things in the ashes.
They did. Just a few mundane items. A metal shoe buckle, a collar stay, and, importantly, fragments of corrective lenses. Tiny clues, but they proved a man died there.
So, Emmanuel is dead. 11 days go by. Pilčík has kept up the lie to Renata and Daniela. And then he comes for Renata.
She was next. He lured her into the forest near Seneca, probably telling her it was finally time for her to cross. Her death was just as brutal. He struck her with the club to subdue her.
But he changed the method. No fire this time.
No fire. He strangled her with a rope. He even stuffed a gag in her mouth, probably to silence any final struggle.
And then he buried her.
Buried her in a shallow grave in a local sand pit. He must have thought the forest would keep his secret.
But it didn't. Her body was found months later, on July 20th, by some children.
Yeah, children who were out gathering sand for scouring pots, a common chore back then. They found the body. Well, it was semi-naked and in an advanced state of decay, buried for months.
So identification must have been almost impossible at first. How did they figure out it was her?
This is where you see some really great old-school forensic work. A textbook case, really. The police couldn't identify her visually, but they noted a very distinctive and relatively rare piece of dental work.
An accolade inlay.
Exactly, an accolade inlay. It's a specific type of metal alloy filling. Not everyone had one. So the police circulated the specific detail to all the dentists in the Pilcher region.
And they got a hit.
They got a hit. A local dentist recognized his own work. He knew the specific technique, the materials. He checked his records and gave them the name. Renata Baliova.
That's the breakthrough. That one tiny detail breaks the case wide open.
It does. Because now the police know the adult family members are dead. They've been violently murdered. But the one question that remains is, where is the 12-year-old girl, Daniela?
And this is where the story goes from just murder into something uniquely depraved.
It really does. Finding Renata's body confirmed the murders, but what Pilčík did with Daniela, it goes beyond serial killing. It's calculated, prolonged torture for financial gain.
He kept her alive. He didn't kill her right away. He kept her prisoner.
In his own goat shed. Right in his backyard. When the police found her, she was in just a horrifying state. Physically, psychologically, completely devastated. He held her there for about 2 months.
And he had a reason for keeping her alive. It was part of the scam. He needed her.
He needed her, and he built this terrifying device to make sure no one hurt her. This is where his skills as a locksmith from the Akota factory come into play. It's this awful intersection of technical skill and pure sadism.
What was the device?
He built a large wooden box. It had double walls, and he stuffed the space between them with rags for soundproofing.
And this box, he put it over her head.
Placed it right over her head. And to make sure she could breathe, he engineered a metal tube into the lid that she was forced to clamp her mouth on.
I can't even imagine the terror of that.
It's sensory deprivation. It's torture. She was strapped to a board, unable to move, for up to 16 hours a day.
16 hours.
In a filthy goat shed. The sources even mentioned she couldn't defend herself from insects. It was just continuous, methodical torment happening just meters away from his house.
And all this cruelty had a purpose for him. She was the key to getting his final payment.
The coldest part of the whole thing. He forced Daniela, this traumatized little girl, to write letters to her relatives.
Letters saying what?
Saying her father and her Aunt Renata had made it safely across to West Germany, that they were fine, and that she, Daniela, was just staying with the kind uncle for a little while until they could send for her.
He delivered these letters himself.
He did. He played the part of the hero ferryman, delivered the letters, and then demanded his final payment. More jewelry, more valuables. For a job well done. He was using her suffering to fund his next crime.
Which brings us to his wife, Antony. It seems impossible that she didn't know something was going on.
The neighbors noticed things. They saw Antony suddenly wearing a lot of new jewelry, new clothes, the spoils of her husband's crimes.
What did she say when she was questioned?
Initially, she denied everything. Her story was that she was terrified of her husband, and that's why she never reported him.
But she did eventually confess to part of it.
Yes, she partially confessed. Not to knowing about the murders or the abuse of Daniela, but to her involvement in the illegal smuggling operation and profiting from it. She ended up getting a 5-year sentence and had all her property confiscated.
Whether it was fear or greed, she let it happen.
She let it happen. She was released in 1955. A footnote, really, but a complicit one.
So Renata's body, being identified via the dental inlay, puts the spotlight right on Pilčík. But the police still had to navigate this really tricky political situation to get a witness to talk.
Right. They first go to Renata's friend and her aunt. And the aunt, at first, sticks to the story that Renata and Emmanuel made it across the border.
And that wasn't out of loyalty to Pilčík. That was self-preservation.
Pure fear. We have to stress this, especially for listeners who don't know the history. Under that regime, just admitting you were trying to help someone escape illegally, that could mean prison for you, loss of your job, your home.
So she was protecting herself.
She was in an impossible position. But eventually, the reality that her relatives were actually dead, murdered, that fear finally became greater than her fear of the state.
And that's when she gave them the name.
She broke. She gave them Pilčík's address and his nickname, Uncle. Now the police knew exactly who they were after.
And they knew he was armed. Heavily armed. The arrest had to be handled very carefully.
Extremely carefully. This was September 6th, 1951. You don't have SWAT teams back then. They planned it with a lot of caution. They secured the whole neighborhood in Seneca first.
And they used a classic trick to get inside.
A simple ruse. 2 officers posed as workers from the electric company. They knocked on his door and said they needed to change the meter. Once they were inside and saw he was alone, they arrested him. He didn't fight.
And the search of the house must have been just mind-blowing for the officers involved.
It was. First, and most importantly, they found Daniela alive. They rescued her, and then they started to uncover the sheer scale of his crimes. They found the weapons cache, of course, but also just piles of personal items. Luggage, clothes, documents, IDs, belonging to so many different people.
And the fur coats, that detail always stands out.
The 12 expensive women's fur coats. Think about that. That's 12 potential female victims right there. They also found partially burned documents in the garden. He was trying to erase identities.
What was his defense for all this? How did he explain having all these people's belongings?
It was a pretty weak story. He just claimed that all these things, the coats, the jewelry, the luggage, were gifts, generous rewards from all the people he'd successfully helped get across the border.
A lie that just falls apart immediately.
Instantly. No one fleeing for their life gives away their luggage and their ID as a thank you present. Those are the very things you need to start a new life. The sheer volume of stuff made it clear he was a prolific killer.
And that evidence helped them connect him to other victims beyond the Ballies.
It did. They confirmed the murders of an engineer, Lubomir Kraus, and his wife, Eva. Her body had been found in another burned-down hunting lodge, same MO as Emanuel Bally.
So he had a pattern.
A clear pattern. And the Kraus couple's suitcases were found in Pilčík's house. But he still denied it. He kept insisting they were living happily abroad.
And then there was the merchant from Plage, Jan Hurka. This one feels especially cool because Hurka had actually stayed with Pilčík for weeks.
A total betrayal of trust. They found Hurka's ID and even his artificial dentures among Pilčík's things. And when they confronted him with that, Pilčík actually confessed to killing him.
He confessed.
He did, but boastfully. He told the police, "You can't convict me without a body." He thought he knew the law better than they did.
But there's a final twisted detail here about his motivation. He actually did help someone cross the border successfully. Another man, also named Jan Hurka.
And this detail tells you everything you need to know about him. This other Jan Hurka was poor. He had nothing valuable, nothing worth stealing.
So Pilčík let him live?
He let him live. He only killed the people who could make him rich. His motive was pure, ruthless greed. He'd kill a whole family for their jewelry, but help a poor man for nothing because there was no profit in his death. It's the coldest calculus imaginable.
The charges they eventually brought against him must have been a very long list.
An incredibly long list. It really reflected the sheer scope of what he'd done. He was charged with quintuple murder, public endangerment, illegal arming, rape, restricting personal freedom.
And tormenting a person in his care, which must refer to Daniela.
Yes, specifically for what he did to Daniela, plus fraud, theft, aiding illegal escape. The list went on and on.
But even with all this evidence, he didn't cooperate, did he? His interrogation strategy was bizarre.
Deeply uncooperative. He did this strange thing where he would confess to murders that never happened. He'd make up names of people the police couldn't find, but he would deny the murders they could prove, like the Kraus couple.
What was the point of that? Was he just playing games?
It's hard to say. It could be pure narcissism, just enjoying the control, or if you believe the theory that he was working for the state security, it could have been a strategy to confuse the investigation, to protect something bigger.
And they discovered he wasn't finished killing. He had more plans.
That's one of the most chilling details. He admitted he had a plan to murder 4 more people.
Who was on the list?
His own wife, Antony, Emanuel Bally's wife, Renata Baliova's aunt, the woman who turned him in, and finally, Daniela, the little girl. He was planning to eliminate all the loose ends.
He even had a date set for it.
He did, September 9th, 1951. But he never got the chance to carry it out.
Because he died. On that exact day.
On the very day he had planned his next murders, Hubert Pilčík died in his cell in Simbori prison. The official cause of death was suicide. They said he hanged himself with 2 handkerchiefs tied together.
And that official story. Nobody really bought it, did they? This is where the whole case gets tangled up in the political shadow of Operation Common.
Exactly. The theory that Pilčík was secretly a collaborator with the state security, the STB, started almost immediately. And while the sources are clear this was never officially confirmed, it's a powerful theory.
A man like him, a locksmith, an expert guide. He's the perfect asset for an operation like that.
The perfect asset. So Operation Common, or Operation Stone, for our listeners, this wasn't just about catching people at the border. This was a sophisticated intelligence operation.
The psychological trap.
A total trap. The STB used fake guides, fake krevadajic, to lead people across a fake border. They'd set up fake border markers, the whole thing, to make people think they'd made it to West Germany.
And once they thought they were safe,
they'd be arrested by other STB agents pretending to be American or West German intelligence.
Who would then interrogate them.
And get all sorts of information, names of other contacts, real escape routes, everything. Then they'd either be thrown in prison or sometimes just let go to spread confusion and paranoia among the real resistance networks.
And there's actual evidence suggesting Pilčík had some kind of official protection, right?
There's one very strong piece of evidence. He had a special permit that allowed him to move freely in the border zone.
Which was a heavily restricted military area.
Absolutely. An ordinary citizen would never get a permit like that. It strongly suggests he was working with someone in power.
And then there are the details of his suicide. They just don't add up.
The sources point out a lot of inconsistencies. First, he somehow got 2 handkerchiefs instead of the standard one. But the biggest red flag is the autopsy report. It concluded he died by hanging, but the pressure marks were only on the front of his neck.
Which isn't typical for a hanging.
It's very unusual, and you combine that with some unconfirmed reports that he was actually beaten to death by guards. The whole thing becomes incredibly suspicious.
It sounds like he was silenced.
Whether it was the STB silencing him to protect Operation Common, or just prison guards taking matters into their own hands with a monster, we'll never know. But he took his secrets with him.
And whether he was working alone or for the state, the real tragedy is that we'll never know how many people he actually killed. The official count of 5. It's just the tip of the iceberg.
It's almost certainly a fraction of the real number. The investigation was just so difficult. First, trying to trace missing people from behind the Iron Curtain was nearly impossible.
And the families of the victims were too scared to talk.
Exactly. We talked about this before. Coming forward meant admitting you were involved in an illegal escape attempt. For many families, it was safer to just pretend their loved ones made it across than to cooperate with a murder investigation that could land them in prison.
So his victims were silenced twice, once by him, and again by the state's oppression.
It effectively created a silent grave for so many of them.
And the evidence they found in his house, the luggage, the documents, those 12 fur coats, it all screams that he killed many, many more people.
The physical evidence tells a story of a systematic, high-volume killer.
And the case has left behind these chilling physical artifacts that you can still see today.
They're incredibly powerful. The torture device, that soundproof box he built for Daniela's head, it's on display at the police museum in Prague. It's just a material testament to his calculated cruelty.
And then there's the story of Pilčík's own remains.
It's a very macabre footnote. For some reason, after his death, his head was separated from his body and preserved in alcohol. It's not entirely clear, but it was stored at the Institute of Forensic Medicine in Trav for over 70 years. It was only moved to the police museum in 2022 to be with the other artifacts from the case.
It's like the state couldn't quite let go of this monster.
It shows how significant and horrifying his case was to Czech criminal history.
And the story immediately entered pop culture, didn't it?
It did. It inspired an episode of a very famous TV series called 30 Cases of Major Zeman. It was called The Beast. And there have been films, books, radio plays. The story of Uncle has really endured in the public memory.
I think it's because it's such a potent story.
Yeah.
It's this perfect storm of desperation meeting pure greed. He preyed on the most fundamental human desire, the desire for freedom.
And his nickname, Uncle, was his greatest weapon. It was the ultimate betrayal of that false sense of security.
When a political system creates that kind of moral vacuum, it makes a perfect ecosystem for someone like Pilčík to thrive. He wasn't killing for ideology.
No, he killed people for a suitcase and a fur coat. He turned that desperate search for safety into the deadliest trap of all.
And the final thought that really sticks with me is that detail about the 2 Jan Hirkes. The fact that he let the poor one live and kill the wealthy one. It shows that in his world, capital was the only thing that mattered. The politics created the opportunity, but it was pure, simple greed that pulled the trigger. The cost of freedom was measured in gold, and paid with the ultimate betrayal of trust.